It's time for a writing video. Hi, I'm Colleen. If you are new here, I am a writer and I am a librarian, and I talk about writing and books, obviously. So, do you want to write a romance novel? I did. I wanted to write lots of romance novels. I wrote tons of romance novels, and some of them I did self-publish, and some of them I pushed back into the dark recesses of my computer, never to be seen again, hopefully, by human eyes at any point. And then I finally wrote a romance novel that's getting published in 2024. Very exciting. So this video is going to be about books you can read before or after you write your romance novel to make it a better romance novel. Now, I have some experience with this. That book I talked about that's going to be published in 2024 is called The Hedgewitch. I wrote The Hedgewitch, the first rendition of it, in 2019. And then in 2020, after querying it and not getting an agent and not getting a publishing contract or deal, I decided to read some writing books. And these are the books I'm going to talk about because after I read these writing books, I then did get a publishing deal. So they really helped my rewriting phase, and they've really helped me with every other romance novel I've written from then on. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that if you are writing a romance novel, you should be reading a ton in your particular subgenre. So if you're writing a historical romance novel, you should be piling up your bedside table, like mine is, with all of the greats. Beverly Jenkins, Sarah McLean, Lisa Kleypas, Tessa Dare, all of the people who you want to write like. If you are writing a contemporary romance novel, do the same thing, or paranormal, or whatever. Make sure you're reading and consuming a lot in your subgenre so you start to understand sort of your subgenre's expectations. I wanted to add that I'm not saying that reading these books is going to catapult you to a publishing deal. You do have to actually do the work and write the book and make sure the book is interesting and well written, but it might help if you're stuck, especially if you're stuck on plot arcing, which is something I was stuck on. So the first book I'm going to recommend you read, and I recommend anyone who wants to write a novel read this one, is Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. So this is the first writing book I read in 2020 when I was looking to get a little better at writing and maybe find someone who wanted this book that I had worked really hard on. I have an unbelievable amount of text highlighted in this book, and I switched different color highlighters a couple times in here, but I found it really, really helpful for plotting out a novel. Now, I will say this one isn't specific to romance novels. This is any kind of novel you want to write. And the author, Jessica Brody, does break down different types of novels and how they might look plotted out. But this is really, really helpful. And it's not a dense read. It's a very easy read. And my favorite thing is that when she's going over different plot beats that you should hit in your novel, she gives you an example, and she uses several really popular books. So you've read probably one of them, and if not, you're familiar with the story. I recommend this to anyone who wants to start writing. Read this first, because if I had read this first, it would have saved me a lot of time in drafting. The next book is very specific to romance writers, and I read this one second, and it is Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. This is very short. You can read this in a day. I did get the hard copy rather than the Kindle because I knew I would want to be able to easily access it, and I'm very weird about my Kindle. If I'm in the middle of a book on my Kindle, I won't go away from that book till I'm done with it. It's a weird thing I have in my brain. But this is a great read for romance novelists. When I was drafting The Hedgewitch, I first took Save the Cat and wrote down all the plot beats for that one. But then afterwards, I did Romancing the Beat and wrote down all the plot beats for that as well. And I think if you're reading a romance novel, you definitely need to layer in the plot beats in Romancing the Beat that they have, because they are slightly different than Save the Cat when you are following a relationship rather than just a plot, depending on if it's, a mystery, an action, historical fiction, whatever. You need those romance plot beats, which this is very helpful to. When I write a novel now, because The Hedgewitch is a series, I make an Excel sheet. I have one column that has all the Save the Cat plot beats, and then I have one column that has all the Romancing the Beat plot beats, and then I have one column that's my chapters, so I can kind of keep track, make sure I'm following in my chapters, my plot beats, and they're happening at the right time. It's extremely helpful. My last recommendation is a book I got on my Kindle, and it's Romance Your Brand by Zoe York. And this was recommended to me by another romance writing friend, and this was huge. So I took probably 20 pages of notes while I was reading this book. And it's a trilogy. I've only read the first one so far because I am allowing myself to read the second one as a treat in September, and then I'll read the third one in a couple months. I'm like using it as a reward. But the first one, Romance Your Brand, is really about how to build a marketable series, which is hugely helpful advice as someone who wrote a series that was not successful when I was writing under Lucy Hudson. My Falling For You series, I did not do a lot of the things that Zoe York tells you you need to do if you want to hook readers into a series, and that was important. So now I know to do that. And I'm not going to tell you what she says because I really do think you should pay for this book and buy it or go to your library and get it because it has such phenomenal advice. This is very good advice also for people who are looking to be career authors, which is honestly my dream. So that's someone who writes multiple books a year. You're not like a person who writes a breakout hit and then that's that. You don't write another book for 5 years, but like someone who really wants to write full time and that be their job and not have something they do kind of on the side every time they get like a shiny idea. And Zoe York is a self-published author who's done that. While I'm not self-publishing my book, The Hedgewitch, that is going to be traditionally published, I am going with a smaller press. So a lot of the stuff that she talked about is extremely helpful for small press authors as well. And just for general authors trying to get out there because you do need a marketable book, especially if you're going into an agent or a small press and saying, hey, I have this idea and it is a book series and there's going to be 12 books in it, or probably not 12, but like even a trilogy. They're really going to want to know whether or not it's smart to take a chance on a new author who isn't writing a standalone. And if you're like me, I've never written a standalone, really. Some of my holiday books are kind of standalones, but I still clump them together in a series because I'm afraid to write a standalone. I never have enough space in one book to get all my ideas out in it, to play in the world that we're living in. So those are my 3 books I really recommend you read if you want to write a romance novel. Granted, these are not really books about how to write. They're books about how to plot. I think that if you want to read books on how to write, you know, there's a lot of books about like that. There's On Writing by Stephen King. There's a really good book I read by Christopher Vogel, and the title is escaping me, but I'll put a picture of it right here, which I really liked that for like character development. For me, especially when working on romance novels, plotting is always the most difficult part for me. I don't have a hard time creating characters or settings or even like tension. I just need to know the order I need to put this in. So for that reason, these books have been extremely helpful to me. And Zoe York's book, of course, very helpful to create a marketable series, which a lot of romance novels now are series. There are some books that I've read recently that I thought were going to be standalones, like The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. The sequel is coming out this fall. So I feel like the majority of romance novels really do feel like series. Even like Allie Hazelwood's books, I can't remember. The Love Hypothesis is the first one. That's not, I don't think that's necessarily a series, but she has a lot of books that seem to take place in that same world. So building your brand and building a series has become quite popular in the romance world. I hope if you are still hanging around, you found this to be somewhat informative and helpful video. If you have any questions about any of these books, please throw it in the comments. If you feel like I don't want to spend money on these many books for something that I'm not sure if I'm going to go through with, then go to your local library, and if they don't have them, request they buy them. As a librarian, I'm telling you, that is something you can do. You can walk up to a librarian and say, hey, can you please put Romance Your Brand by Zoe York into your collection? And they might say no, but the libraries I've worked at, we've really like looked at what the book is, and you know, they've got budgets to buy new books. So ask them to buy them for you so you can use them. And then other people in your library system will be glad you did that, because then they'll be able to use them as well and not spend money on them. I hope you are having a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And as always, happy writing.